Midnight. The lights of the busy city streets were starting to fade. A cold wind wrapped itself around the trembling hands of a homeless man. No one looked at him. No one listened. But in that moment, something unseen by the rest of the city was about to happen. Keanu Reeves took a quiet step forward. Keanu noticed an elderly homeless man sitting at the corner of a narrow, empty street. The man's face was worn, his clothes tattered, but there was a deep story hidden in his eyes. "You're not alone. Please, have something to eat." That simple act of kindness was the first step down a path that would change both of their lives forever. But the truth was far more than Keanu ever expected. The homeless man looked at Keanu, caught between shock and gratitude. A bond formed between them, deeper than words. Under the dim glow of the city's streetlights, the silence grew heavier. Keanu sat down beside the homeless man right there on the curb. The steam from the food he had just given him had faded, leaving only a few crumbs around the edges of the container. "I get the feeling you haven't had someone to talk to in a long time. Am I right? Sometimes you forget how to talk. When no one listens, even the words run away from you." "Not tonight. Let the words stay. I'm here, really here." Between them, a quiet conversation began, something deeper than the noise of the streets. In that moment, Keanu wasn't a celebrity. He was just a quiet friend carrying the weight of another man's silence. The homeless man looked down at his feet. His toes were purple from the cold. His jacket was worn, patched, and torn. His face held the weight of years, but in his eyes, there was still a spark. "I used to wear suits. People respected me. They knew my name. They'd pat my back. Now, I've forgotten my name, and my voice too." "What was your name?" He paused, narrowing his eyes as if reaching into some distant memory. "James. At least, it used to be." That name, James, etched itself into Keanu's mind. It wasn't just a name. It was the echo of a buried past, a forgotten identity. Keanu reached into his jacket and pulled out a small notepad. With a pencil tucked inside, he wrote something quietly between the pages. "What are you writing?" "I'm writing what I saw tonight. Your humanity. A story. My story's over." "No. Tonight we turned a page." In that sentence, Keanu found not only James's voice, but something in himself too. In that moment, it wasn't the past that mattered. It was now. Keanu placed the notebook on his lap and looked up at James. The air had gotten colder, but somehow the connection between them had grown warmer. A few people passed by on the street, glancing at them briefly, but most just kept walking. "James, can I ask you something?" Keanu's voice was thoughtful. "You don't have to answer if you don't want to. But who were you, really?" James nodded slowly, his eyes drifting off into the distance. I was a teacher. At a public school, I used to teach music to kids, tried to help small hands reach big dreams." "A music teacher?" Keanu whispered. James gave a faint, bittersweet smile. "There was this one student. I still remember her name, Lily. She used to bring me flowers every morning. Back then, every day meant something." "What happened?" Keanu asked softly, eyes beginning to fill. James closed his eyes, his voice breaking. "My wife got sick. The medical bills piled up. I sold everything, our house, the car, but I couldn't save her. After that, I left the school too. Life just slowly pushed me aside." Keanu felt every word deep in his chest. This man's hands had once given hope to children, and now they were holding onto cold concrete. And the world had simply forgotten him. Keanu reached into his pocket for his phone, but James quickly raised a hand. "No. Please, don't call the police. I don't want a shelter. I just need to make it through one more night." "I won't call the police," Keanu said gently. "But you need someone to hear you. A place where you can feel safe. Find some peace. Tonight I brought more than food. I brought a little hope too." They sat together in silence for a while. James had lowered his head, tears quietly running down his cheeks. Then Keanu stood up, took off his coat, and gently draped it over James's shoulders. "This won't just keep you warm," Keanu said softly. "It's a promise. I won't forget you." James's voice cracked as he whispered, "I used to tell myself, someone would remember me someday. I just didn't think it would happen so soon." In that moment, the story of an actor and a homeless man had become one. But it wasn't just coincidence. It was a moment where time and humanity crossed paths. Keanu hadn't just touched James's life for one night. He reminded him what it felt like to belong again. Keanu stayed with him. They sat under the glow of the streetlights, talking quietly about the past. Sometimes James would chuckle softly. Other times, when he fell silent, his eyes would darken again. But now he wasn't alone. Neither Keanu nor James ever forgot that night. Because sometimes, a person's fate begins to change, with just a small, quiet act of kindness. And that path doesn't lead back into loneliness, but toward life, lived with dignity again. The night had deepened. The glow of the streetlights had grown dimmer. James sat quietly on the bench, still wrapped in Keanu's coat, while Keanu had stepped a short distance away, speaking on his phone. His voice was low, but his expression made it clear. This was serious. Keanu, quietly but firmly on the phone. "Yeah, Kevin, it's urgent. I think I know this man. No, it's not just a coincidence. Can you run a name for me? James O'Connor. He used to be a teacher. Music, I think. Yeah, please check now." Keanu was trusting his instincts. There was something in James's words, something broken, but not beyond repair. And maybe, just maybe, a sliver of hope could still be saved. James slowly lifted his head and watched Keanu from a distance. There was gratitude in his eyes, but also fear. Then, Keanu returned to the bench and sat beside him again. James, hesitantly, "Why are you helping me? Who am I? Really? I'm just a shadow. A man no one sees anymore." Keanu, calm but clear, "Because I see you. I see your past, your losses, and the love you still carry in your eyes. And I know that once you were a light to others too." James, eyes welling up, "I thought that light had gone out. Until you came." Just then, Keanu's phone rang again. It was Kevin. Keanu answered. James listened closely, watching him carefully. Keanu, on the phone. "Yeah? What did you find?" "Wait, say that again." James O'Connor, named Teacher of the Year in 1995, worked in multiple community outreach programs, founded a music school. Wife underwent cancer treatment for a year. Keanu's voice trembled. James wasn't just anybody. He was a legend, a quiet, humble hero, who life had tried to erase with whispers. Keanu ended the call and looked over at James. James had heard it all. His eyes were full of tears, his lips trembling. James, softly, to himself, "If someone still remembers, maybe I'm not completely lost." Keanu gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "You were never lost, James. You just needed someone to hear you." At that moment, a young man walked by and noticed Keanu. Recognizing him, he excitedly approached. But Keanu held out a hand, motioning for him to stop, then nodded toward James. "Keanu, kindly. Tonight, I'm not just Keanu. Tonight, I'm his friend. Let's not interrupt our story, okay?" The young man nodded respectfully. "Of course. I'm sorry." That night, Keanu didn't just rescue a man. He restored a past, a meaning, and a life. And for the first time in years, James felt human again, seen, worth something. The camera slowly pulled upward. Keanu and James still sat side by side on the bench. Their faces were calm, lit by something deeper than light, understanding. Far in the distance, the first signs of morning began to appear. Sometimes a person's life begins again, with the quiet mercy of a stranger. And sometimes, in the most unexpected places, a star starts shining again. The next morning, the sun began peeking through the gray buildings. The budding light whispered that a new day had arrived. James was still sitting in the park, wrapped in Keanu's coat. But this time, he wasn't alone. Keanu returned, holding 2 cups of coffee. Keanu, smiling. "One with milk, one black. I didn't know which you used to prefer, so I took a guess." James, smiling faintly, taking the cup. "Black, always black? That's how my wife liked it?" James's voice was calmer now. The shadows from yesterday had faded just a little. Because after all these years, Someone had finally remembered him, treated him like a human being. Keanu pulled out his phone. On the screen was an old web page, an archive from the school where James used to teach. A black and white photo of a younger James, a violin in his hands, hope in his eyes. Keanu showing him the screen. "This is you, right? Those eyes, you still have them." James, eyes welling up as he looks. "Yes, that was me. I taught those kids music. I remembered every one of their names. They were my family." Keanu, calm but resolute. "Then you still are. There are people out there who haven't forgotten you. And I think it's time. You found your way back to them." Later that day, Keanu took James to the place where the old music school once stood. The building was still there, but its walls looked tired, and the sign had faded. James, his throat tight. "This place, it closed years ago. After my wife passed, I couldn't bear to stay. No one came, no one asked." Keanu, gently. "But someone came now. And James, I need to tell you something. We can open this place again. Together." Keanu then went live on his social media account. Behind him stood James in the old school building. Keanu spoke directly into the camera. Keanu, looking into the camera sincerely. "Today, I just want to talk to you about one man, James O'Connor. Once he taught music to hundreds of kids. He gave them hope. But over the years, he was quietly forgotten. Now it's time we remember him. Time we hear stories like his again." Keanu's words echoed. In a matter of hours, hundreds of thousands watched the video. James's story spread across the internet. Messages poured in, donations, volunteers, support from all around the world. And at that moment, James's life began to change again. A week later, the courtyard of the old music school was filled with people. They were cleaning, painting, bringing the place back to life. Young volunteers, former students, even the media was there. James, looking at the crowd, voice trembling. "I was just a teacher. I never imagined anything like this. This is a second chance. Thank you." Keanu, smiling. "This is only the beginning." That day, it wasn't just a school that reopened. A man stepped out of silence and returned to the world. And what made it all possible was a warm meal and the quiet mercy of a stranger. As the sun began to set, James stood in the school courtyard, now cleaned and full of life. He gave a short music lesson to a group of children. In his hands, an old violin, but the way he held it was still graceful. Keanu watched from a few steps away, quietly smiling. Keanu's ripple of kindness wasn't just rebuilding a school, it was rebuilding a life. But he knew this couldn't be just a one-day miracle. The next morning, Keanu brought James to a clothing store. Inside were racks of jackets, shoes, and winter coats. James looked around, a little embarrassed. "James," softly, "I didn't need all this. I've gotten by with so little." Keanu, smiling, "You don't have to get by anymore. A teacher, a hero, should dress like one." After a while, James stepped out of the fitting room. He wore a clean, simple shirt, dark trousers, and a brown coat. As he looked at himself in the mirror, his eyes filled with tears. "James," barely a whisper. "For the first time in years, I'm seeing myself again." Keanu, gently, "And everyone else will see you too, and they'll admire what they see." Then, Keanu took James to a small, cozy house. There was a wooden bench in the front yard. Inside, simple, tidy furniture, a classic record player on the table, and the smell of coffee in the kitchen. James, stunned, voice trembling. What is this?" Keanu, holding out a key. "It's yours, made possible by hundreds of people who wanted to help. Now you'll have a place to wake up every morning. You'll be safe." To James, this wasn't just a house. It was a new beginning. After years of being lost on the streets, his heart had finally found a place to rest. That night, James stood by the window. Street lights glowed gently outside. In his hands, an old photograph, his younger self and his wife smiling. His eyes were wet, but his face was peaceful. James whispering, "Lillian, someone finally saw me. Someone remembered." The quiet step Keanu had taken, a simple act of compassion, had completely changed a man's fate. And it had touched not only James, but the hearts of millions who had watched and remembered what kindness could do. In the small kitchen of his new home, James prepared coffee. A soft beep, a message arrived on his phone. It was from an old colleague at the orphanage. The message read, "James, your students are proud of you. You were a light in their lives." James, eyes filled with emotion, a gentle smile. "And they've become a new family for me." Later that day, Keanu came by. The two walked through an old park, autumn leaves dancing in the wind. James spoke slowly, with quiet reflection. James thoughtfully. I used to have a life, losses, mistakes, regrets. But now, I can offer something new to these kids. Hope. Keanu warmly. And someone like you should. Sometimes life opens new doors. In the most unexpected ways. At school, James hosted a small classical music session. Children listened with wide eyes, their faces glowing with curiosity and joy. James played soft melodies on his violin, and in that room, time seemed to pause. James wasn't just reviving music, he was reviving something deeper, the hope they had once lost. But adapting to a new life wasn't easy. There were nights when shadows from the past returned. James would sit alone, staring at old photographs, memories flickering through his mind like candlelight. James, softly to himself, I have to make peace with what I've lost, and finally forgive myself. Keanu later arranged a small meeting with the donors who helped provide James's home. At the gathering, James stood and spoke, his voice steady but full of feeling. James heartfelt. This new life gave me a second chance. I'll never forget the days I spent on the streets, the hope I thought I'd lost. But now, I know, I can leave that pain behind. Keanu's quiet act of kindness hadn't just changed one man's path. It had opened doors for countless others who had once felt forgotten. Keanu's visit had set off a quiet transformation in James's life. That day at school, he faced his students with a whole new energy. He was no longer just a teacher, he was a man who had rediscovered the good in himself. Keanu's words kept echoing in his head. Sometimes you don't need to be a movie star to change the world. Showing up for a child at the right moment is enough. After the last class of the week, James walked home. In his hand, he carried a bundle of drawings his students had made. Bright colors, innocent faces, sunny days. They meant everything to him now. Life only felt worthwhile when he could lighten someone else's burden. He stopped at the corner deli, bought his usual sandwich, then turned to head back. That's when he noticed movement in the park. An old man, hunched on his knees, wrapped in a battered overcoat. He was shivering, rubbing his hands together, but his body still shook from the cold. James hesitated, then walked over. He split the sandwich in two and offered half without a word. It's not warm, he said gently, but it'll hold you for a while. The man looked up. Age lined his face, but his eyes held a deep exhaustion. He took the sandwich, stared at James for a moment, then whispered, It's been a long time since anyone really looked at me. James smiled. Helping felt natural to him now. He guided the man to a bench and handed him a bottle of water. The man still hadn't eaten more than a bite. His gaze drifted far away. After a long pause, James asked softly, Do you live around here? The man nodded, eyes on the ground. If you can call it living. I move from one bench to another. I'm alone. I used to have a son. Can't even say his name anymore. James's face grew serious. What happened to him? The man drew a shaky breath. A crash. I was driving. He was in the back seat. 1 second of distraction, a lifetime of silence. My wife left. I couldn't forgive myself. No one else did. Everything went quiet. A familiar ache rose in James's chest. Loss, loneliness, regret. I exiled myself after that, the man went on. Didn't go to prison, but the streets were punishment enough. I didn't want anyone to see me, but you did. James took a long breath. In that moment, Keanu's voice returned. Showing up for a child at the right moment is enough. But maybe, sometimes, it's enough for a grown man too. James stood, pulled out his phone, and called Vice Principal Ms. Kiera. Ms. Kiera, remember the community garden project behind the school? Are you still looking for volunteers? Great. I'm bringing someone over. Today. The man lifted his head in surprise. No. Who am I? I don't do anything but disappoint people. James knelt, placing a hand on his shoulder. You're not alone now. And here, nobody cares about your past, only about tomorrow. Within the hour, James brought him to the school, introduced him to the principal, and Ms. Kiera greeted the man with a quiet nod and a warm smile. A few weeks later, the old man was working in the school's vegetable plots. He showed the kids how to hold a hoe, how to smell the soil. The youngest students had started calling him Papa John. And James, he hadn't just offered help, he'd witnessed the start of a second life.